WFLA Now will begin momentarily. WFLA Now will begin momentarily. Streaming live on WFLA Now, powered by 1-800-ASK-GARY. Here's J.B. Buno.
Right now, the FBI's investigation into the murder of Gabby Petito and the death of Brian Laundrie entering unknown territory. What are the next steps for the FBI, and when might the public learn exactly what happened to Gabby and Brian? Our 8 on Your Side team live with the latest on where this all goes from here and the answers that months later want to know the answers to and why they remain a mystery. Hey there, folks. J.B. Buno here with you live on WFLA Now, back here with you, talking about Gabby Petito, talking about Brian Laundrie with our 8 on Your Side team. You see there on the right side of your screen. Let's introduce you, or for a lot of folks, reintroduce you to our 8 on Your Side investigative team. 8 on Your Side investigator Masa Saidi, as well as 8 on Your Side investigator Walt Potito there in the bottom right-hand portion of your screen. We're going to be going over a lot over the next hour here with us. So to everybody joining us here on Facebook and YouTube, hello there to you again. We're going to be featuring your comments here using the hashtags you see on your screen, as we do here interactively on WFLA Now. You can use hashtag Hey Masa, hashtag Hey Walt, or hashtag Hey JB in the Facebook Live, YouTube Live, or on Twitter, in those comment sections or on Twitter, and we'll be able to feature your comments over the course of our interactive stream here as we talk about the next steps in the Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie investigation. We also have video questions coming your way here as well, but I'm going to throw up Masa and Walt here first. Guys, this has been several weeks now since we've been talking about this story here live on WFLA Now. Masa, I'll start with you. The case now entering, as I said, unknown territory because all of the work now being done behind the scenes. And what is the next step in your estimation?
Well, I think the biggest question right now that is still unanswered is what happened to Brian Laundrie. We know that he's dead. We found that out on October 21st when the FBI notified us that using dental records, they were able to confirm that Brian Laundrie is dead. We still don't know the manner of death. We don't know if this was homicide, if this was suicide, if he died of natural causes, if this was an accident, and certainly we don't know the cause of death. I understand, Walt, and feel free to jump in here, but I understand that anthropologists are still in the process of examining the remains. And as of right now, that could take several weeks. And what are we, 3 weeks out? More than 3 weeks out,
Yeah, and
right?
you know, it's interesting because this case for so long had offered some sort of breaking development every day, like some surprise every day. And now we've been several weeks without it. And I hear from people who say they want to know. And I think the next shoe to drop is the results of that autopsy, the anthropologist working on that. We really don't know. We've heard, not necessarily from an official source, how much of the remains they actually have. But I mean, it's possible. We may never know the exact cause of death or the manner of death, but that is the next shoe to drop. And then you wonder, what does the FBI do with it? I don't know if they're in any obligation legally to actually build a case because they're not going to trial. Obviously. Do they come up with a conclusion and release it? Do they come up with a conclusion and not release it? Do they do it for the family? Do they do it because of the public interest, which is huge in this case? But if they, and here's my question, and I don't know the answer. Maybe you do, JB, the theory here. If we get our evidence, when we get evidence in a case, it's usually after it's released in court. there will be no case. So do they have to tell us?
Could be a civil case.
Right. Well, there you go. That's where we may see everything as a civil case.
Yeah, could be a civil case.
Yeah. But the big thing is that I think that we get asked over and over is that
it could
notebook.
be a criminal case against some other party
right?
involved.
That's right. That's a really good point. Like if somebody else helped him or somewhere along the way he got any help, yeah, they could be building that case, and then we would see the evidence. So
yeah.
And that would be in the hands of Rick Stafford. That's the family attorney for Gabby Petito's family. Of course, Nicole Schmidt, Gabby's mom, and Joe Petito, Gabby's father, and then of course, can't forget about Tara and Joe, stepmother and stepfather, respectively. So it'll be interesting to see if whether or not this ever does reach a courtroom in a civil fashion. We have heard that, of course, the forensic examiners, the anthropologists, are examining the skeletal remains. The dental records confirmed, as Masa noted, are that of Brian Laundrie. It could be, we have heard from experts in the fields of anthropology and others that the remains themselves, that examination process could take several weeks. And that was a couple of weeks ago. So it could be later this month. It could be in early December. But we are anticipating at some point the FBI giving us something.
Yes, they'll tell us what happened.
What happened? Let's not forget, after Gabby Petito's remains were discovered, out of nowhere, there was a press conference by the Teton County coroner where they announced that the results of that autopsy, the cause of death, the manner of death, was manual strangulation, throttling. Could we have, I guess, here's what we don't know. We know that we're going to get some information on the cause of death for Brian Laundrie, whether it's inconclusive, definitively inconclusive, whether or not they actually have determined a cause of death or a likely cause of death. But Masa, while I don't know if that's going to occur in a press release, a tweet from FBI Denver or FBI Tampa. We don't know if there's going to be a similar press conference like we had in Teton County, Wyoming. Are we going to have a similar press conference in Sarasota County, Florida? I have made those calls. I have repeatedly made those calls over to the Sarasota County Medical Examiner's office, the medical examiner that serves that district. I have not been able to get a response. This is very much in the hands of the FBI. So we anticipate getting something, but it could be still a couple more weeks, a few more weeks. And it all depends on the quality in which the remains were found. We know that it was a partial skull, but we just don't know how much they have to work with as far as the forensic examination that's currently underway.
And of what they have, do they have the part of the remains that would allow them to determine a cause of death? Because that's huge, right? If they have partial remains, do they have the part that would be the evidence that would say he died this way, this is how he died? And we don't know that. We don't know that.
And to give viewers a little bit of context there, and this is just giving an example, let's say that, there was a gunshot wound and they're able to have that skeletal piece of remains that was recovered. In that case, you would be able to maybe make that determination of the cause of death. But as Walt said, if this was, let's say, for example, an overdose, that could be something that we never find out, because my understanding from talking with experts is you would get nowhere with toxicology. There was no tissue, there was no fluid, nothing like that.
Same with the drowning. It could be a drowning, right? Same with the drowning. Right.
So I'm going to explain in a second exactly what we're going to be doing over the next hour, because clearly there is no massive update that we're here to talk to you about. We're talking about when the next steps might occur, what the process might look like from here, and again, what the timeline looks like going forward, not the timeline in reverse. We have a lot of questions and comments coming in with the hashtags you see on your screen, as we do here interactively on WFLA Now. You can use hashtag HeyWalt, hashtag HeyMasa, or hashtag HeyJB. If we see one of those comments, we can pluck them out of the YouTube Live, Facebook Live comment sections, or on Twitter. We can animate them on screen. If you don't want your comment to be featured, just don't use the hashtag, and we'll let your comment continue to scroll up on screen. We'll start here from Facebook, from Leanne Swim, and we'll try to go through these really quickly. Hashtag HJB, have Gabby's parents spoke out yet regarding Brian's death? I've been in contact with with Gabby Petito's family. They are not speaking yet. That could be changing in the future. I think you'll be hearing more from them in the future, but right now the family is continuing to kind of stay internal with their communication. Linda Savage on YouTube, hashtag KJB. What has the Laundries house looked like since they said that Brian was found? Guys, it's a great question because we know that the demonstrations were occurring outside of the home there on the street in Northport, and it's considerably more quiet than it has been as it was in September and into early October.
I think one thing that happened here, you know, we went from, I was covering this story every single day for several weeks, and then it just, I don't know, once it just stopped. It just stopped. So we are not, even Brian Enton from News Nation, that has been giving constant updates, that I think was essentially living outside of the Laundrie house. It felt like at some point he was actually in a hotel nearby. But even he has now moved on to another story.
He's focusing on Astroworld at the moment. I spoke to him yesterday, and he's focusing on what's going on in Astroworld. He, of course, reports for News Nation, very much on our team here at WFLA. We are very much affiliated with News Nation as part of Next Star Nation. But
part of the family.
Part of the family is Brian Enton. But yeah, he might be returning to Florida at some point to continue on this story. But right now, he's focusing on Astroworld. Mas, I want to get to this comment here really quickly and explain what we're going to be doing here on this stream. Andrew W. on YouTube, #HJB, Masa and Walt, will the FBI give a final detailed report on findings and details of the case to the public? Do they do that in other cases? This is one of the many unanswered questions that remain, one of the many questions that we get fielded all the time. Even though we haven't been streaming on WFLA Now the last couple of weeks on this story specifically, we've been covering other stories on WFLA Now, as we do here in Florida. We still get endless amounts of phone calls, text messages, I mean, DMs, emails. Masa and Walt, you guys, I know, we still...
Sorry, I'm not able to cover it every day.
So persistent, the number of unanswered questions that we get fielded our way. So what we did and what we decided to do, actually, well, something I decided to do. What we did was we published a story on WFLA.com, and I put this out on social media about a couple weeks ago, maybe a week and a half ago to 2 weeks ago. And I asked folks, I was having a conversation with somebody recently, not with a camera or microphone in front of my face, just a friend. We were talking about, man, if there was one question that you could get answered in this case, what would it be? And it...
Number 10 for me.
It ignited quite the conversation, right? Quite the conversation. So I decided to put it to our social media audience. I said, hey, if there was one question you really wanted answered in this story, you've been following it now religiously, so many people have around the world. What is that one question? That one question, any one that you could get answered. And so the response online was very loud, vocal, in throwing questions our way. And then, of course, I continuously get questions now around the clock from people around the world on this story. So we organized here the top 10 questions that we get fielded our way on the Gabby Petito, Brian Laundrie story. We're going to go through them here on this stream one by one. But if you want to read it and you don't want to spend the next hour hearing it, of course, you're more than welcome. Grab a cup of coffee if you'd like, a beverage, hang out with us here over the next hour or so. We're going to be going over these questions. But if you'd like to read it for yourself, especially for people that aren't watching live right now, maybe you found this video after we're live, you can just click on the link in the description on this YouTube video. On Facebook, it does live forever, Masa. It does. And you can find this list that we're going to go through, the top questions that remain unanswered from you, our audience members on WFLA Now watching from around the world. You see number 10 there. So Masa, Walt, if you guys are ready, we'll go through it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So we're going to start here with question number 10. And we were just talking about it. And it is, what is Brian Laundrie's cause of death? We don't know, but this is the next logical step with, as far as public information goes, Walt, with where this goes from here. When we're talking about the procedure of an FBI investigation, it's only logical that the next piece of information to drop would be determining how Brian Laundrie died. And this is, I think, a process that has now entered a territory that is longer than it took to determine Gabby Petito's cause of death. And it's just because they're dealing with different remains. The remains were skeletal. It was a partial skull, and the public wants to know the answer to this question.
And theoretically, Brian's remains were out in the wild, and maybe even a wilder area, if you will, than Gabby Petito's remains. So it would seem do not have as much to go with. But yeah, that's the logical next step. Of course, this case has not always been logical, so there could be something else. But this is the next piece of the puzzle that I mean, you said it. It could be inconclusive. They may not have enough to determine the exact cause of death. And then as far as whether or not the FBI releases that, you would think they'd release it unless it's somehow an ongoing investigation. That maybe there's an element we don't know about. But it is obviously something we can only anticipate. And this is something that brings so much speculation about how he died and the manner of death that it's crazy with the theories that are out there.
And to try to answer, will we find out? How will we find out? Who will tell us? I think it makes sense to talk about what happened with Gabby Petito. And in that case, the Teton County coroner, he decided himself that he was going to reveal what he can legally reveal. I asked him, are you in touch with federal authorities? And he said, I'm independent. But we do know that he held off on giving the cause of death. We immediately knew the manner of death, homicide, but he held off on telling us the cause of death for several days because the U.S. Attorney's Office had asked him to do that. But so you wonder with the Sarasota County Examiner, but they are an independent body, but did they get anything? Right.
Did they get heat? Yeah. Or did the Fed say, hey, we don't want another situation to happen the way the coroner in Grand Teton handled it?
Well, yeah, but I mean, but he could still.
He could still do it.
But the Sarasota County coroner didn't really find anything out. So then it was shipped out. The remains were shipped out with the anthropologist. The question is, I've never been clear. This is around the time when we stopped covering the case every single day, digging. But do we know who the anthropologist is? Is it federal? Is it?
No, it's Dr. Vega. Dr. Vega.
That's the Sarasota County, though.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that's what you were asking. No?
No, I'm asking.
She's saying, did he contract it out? Do they not have that ability in that office to do this type of examination?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. So then if the office, what I will go out there and say, if the Sarasota County examiner determine the manner of death or cause of death, I think they could tell us that. And I think there's reasons, to tell us that. That's what happened with Gabby Petito and Grand Teton. But my understanding is, and I know there was a lot of questions surrounding this by information that we were getting from the coroner, from, Brian Laundrie's family attorney, Stephen Bertolino. But I don't know who is the body that is going to tell us. Give us the answers. I thought it was an anthropologist.
I think that Bertolino has talked a lot. He could end up being the one who tells us somehow.
That's true.
Right?
So in the story that we put on WFLA.com, and again, click on the link if you'd like to read it for yourself. I noted we're unsure as to when how we're going to learn the answer to this question. Is it going to be that press release? Excuse me. Is it going to be a tweet, a press release, a press conference, or it would not be out of the ordinary for excuse me, everybody, Bertolino to find out first and then announce it himself through his various means, through texting the media, right?
Possible, absolutely.
Let me ask you this question: is it procedural for them to say that it is the result of suicide? If it is suicide,
yeah, I mean, I don't think that. Yeah, he's talking about sensitivities around suicide, but I don't think that would apply in this case at all.
No, I think they'll release it because I think
whatever they get, they're going to tell us. Whoever gets it, whatever they get about Brian Laundrie, cause and manner, that's the one thing I can tell you we're going to get. I don't think we're going to get much more unless there's a proceeding.
Right. Yeah. So now, then the question is, do they offer any more insight on the days leading up to Gabby Petito's final moments?
Question, yep.
And
Gabby Petito,
and do they,
or Brian Laundrie?
Gabby Petito, because have they somehow learned something? Maybe whether it's in the notebook or timing of his death. I don't know. Because I think that's also a big unanswered question that people have is what happened, what exactly happened in those final days.
We're going to move on to the next question on the list. However, let's just make this clear. Through all the experts that have been chiming in on this story on various networks and media outlets, a timeline has been, or an expected timeline has been established that at some point in mid-November to early December, there's an expectation from the public that this question gets answered. I'm just very curious as to what that timeline looks like and how long it's going to take for the anthropologist to conclude their examination and then, of course, deliver those results to the FBI. But there is this public expectation through those various experts that have been on national news talking about this story that this is expected sometime in the next 3 weeks. Let's see if we can get to a question that came in. How about KPZ1234 on YouTube? Hashtag Hey Masa for you, Masa. Would love more legal analysis from you, given your background. We're going to get to some more legal analysis from Masa. Former New York City prosecutor is Masa Saidi, but you have anything to say for?
I mean, there's not a question, so no, I don't have anything to say.
But yes,
just more legal analysis on. Got it, guys. I will do that.
Tapping into
some good advice.
Masa's legal expertise, and then tapping into Walt's expertise in covering many FBI investigations.
He's been around many years.
I knew that was coming from Masa Saidi over there.
Let's get to number 9 here. Will the FBI, and this goes back to the commenter that we had a short time ago, and let's see if we can bring that comment on screen. It comes from Andrew.
Great
so now it's okay. So now it's all here. Will the FBI ever release their findings in the Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie investigation? Andrew on YouTube, hashtag HeyJB, all the hashtags. Will the FBI give a final detailed report on findings and details of the case, of the public? Do they do that in other cases, Walt?
Not really, they don't. I think that a lot of these cases can get closed for years, but we're talking cases that got adjudicated. Again, we find out what the FBI found out in court. That's where we find out, unless there's a leak, and there are occasional FBI leaks. I would say that there's no guarantee we're getting a final detailed report on this. They don't have to give us that. I don't know if the information they have or the evidence that they have, I would like to think I'm an expert on public records, but I don't know all the answers. I don't know that those are public at this point because they have not been released in court. It's evidence, right? We can get whatever they go to court with. We can get search warrants sometimes from the feds, and that will have some information about what they told the judge in order to get a particular search warrant. But will we find out what's in that notebook? Was there anything in the notebook? Will we find out everything in the backpack? Not necessarily. And do they do that in other cases? The other cases I know about got investigated and adjudicated. But when a person of interest dies as a person of interest and never becomes a suspect, I'll ask Masa Saidi a legal question. Can somebody who is a person of interest become a suspect posthumously?
I don't even understand that question. You've gone back and forth a million times.
You're a person of interest.
Okay, you name. Hold on.
You
name someone as suspect.
No, name them a suspect. They're a person of interest. They die. Can they then become a suspect?
I don't know. I mean, they're not going to file criminal proceedings to go after them. Right. So that's the answer that I'm going to give you. But will someone want to?
No,
but could they? Okay, so they're not going to file criminal charges to put Brian Laundrie in jail since he's dead.
So he doesn't need to be a suspect.
However, could some entity refer to him as a suspect and say, come out with some finding and refer to him as a suspect? Like, sure, Walt, that could happen.
I'll say this: I've never heard of somebody who's deceased being named a suspect in an investigation. That just sounds.
Yeah.
But you know what though?
Wait. Say that again, JB.
I don't know. I can't recall a single case that I have covered.
Me neither.
Where a deceased individual was named a suspect in an official capacity by a law enforcement agency. It just sounds very much out of procedure. Right. For whether it's a local police department, a state agency, or the feds.
Right.
So I
can't either.
Let's go to question number 8 here, and to help us with question number 8, it's going to come in the form of a video question, and I want to make sure that I have the name right because we did take some video questions from the WFLA JB Facebook page last night, and yeah, this comes in from Audrey. Audrey sending this one in Tuesday night.
Hey JB, my name's Audrey. My question to you guys is, what kind of information can we expect from the investigation report? There was never really an indictment for the homicide, just the credit card fraud. So what can we expect to be in there and what can we expect not to be in there? And also thank you guys, the whole WFLA fam, for your excellent and compassionate coverage. Thank you.
Thank you to Audrey for sending that in. So she's talking about an indictment. And again, an indictment is predicated on there being charges filed.
Right.
And so charges aren't going to be filed against a deceased individual, which brings us to question number 8. Will any charges ever be filed in connection to Gabby Petito or Brian Laundrie's deaths?
Possibly.
Yeah, for sure. Possibly.
There could be an obstruction charges. There could be somebody who helped him. But I don't know. At this point, all these theories about him going to Canada and getting these phones and all this don't seem like they happened.
Yeah, no. There could be charges filed against people who are, alive.
Sure.
Possibly.
And at that point, we'd get plenty of information.
Right. I mean, yeah. I was going to go off and give examples, but I don't want to confuse our viewers, so let's not do that. But let's say one family sues the other family.
That's right.
That could be
and
something.
That could happen.
And maybe with their suit, they'll put in requests to get information that the feds have. Maybe the feds would voluntarily share that information.
So if you, as an attorney, go ahead.
Can I just say, I think that if the FBI, if they were able to figure out what happened, I think they would tell the public, because that would show. I mean, you actually said it. It would showcase their abilities. You said it, Walt, and I agree with that. I don't think they're going to figure it out and then never tell us.
The FBI is the consistent. You can ask them anything, and they're going to say we can neither confirm nor deny. That's very consistent, always has been. But they like headlines.
Yeah,
they love a good headline, and they know the public cares about this, and they have compassion. The news conference the day after was it
emotional?
I've never seen an FBI agent emotional like that. I don't believe. So
talking about the one in
yeah. So
was that on
FBI
September 19th?
Yeah, FBI at Denver. It was the day after.
September 19th?
It was the day they found her, the day after.
Yes, Sunday,
it was a
September
Sunday.
19th.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was a press conference that even I got emotional a little bit afterwards, and some of our viewers might remember. Just seeing an FBI special agent get emotional over the discovery of a body and wanting to say, I think that in that press conference, just going back in time, I'll just give everybody my 2 cents. I think that the FBI special agent who gave that press conference, who was tearing up at the time, he wanted to say, listen, we found Gabby. But procedurally, they have to go through the procedure to confirm the identity, and they don't want to say it in that moment, but that they knew. I think that the tears, it was just emotionally holding back the knowledge that after all the searching, after all the media stories, after all the attention, that they had found Gabby Petito. Of course, that press conference being by FBI Denver in Wyoming. So
can I say a quick something?
Yeah, absolutely. But we have also a comment here from Jay Wade coming up. But yeah, Masa, what do you have to say?
I just was going to say, JB and I were in a documentary that you may or may not ever see, but we were in a documentary together. And when I was talking about Gabby Petito, I teared up out of nowhere. So I think it's very difficult when you're answering questions to not get emotional sometimes.
Absolutely.
Like they were asking me a question and I was very embarrassed, but I did tear up in responding to that question. So I mean, I understand.
You shouldn't be embarrassed, Masa.
Well, I don't know if I don't know if we're allowed to do that as a journalist.
No, I hear that. But again,
to.
It goes to the fact that you'd seen all this video of her, right?
You think you know her.
With her. You think you know her. She put herself out there, and she was a different sort of celebrity, and it was in our backyard, and we have friends. She reminded us, her nephews, nieces, whatever, young, vibrant. And we saw more of her than we'd seen of any victim I can ever think of. And we saw her at her lowest point when she was with the police camera video. So yeah, it makes complete sense that we identify with this 23-year-old.
23-year-old. Okay, sorry.
No, 22-year-old. Brian's 23.
Sorry, guys. It's been so long since we've covered this daily. We're forgetting some
21.
numbers.
I know that.
Yeah, and let me just explain that. So the 8 on Your Side investigative team, that is Masa Saidi, Shannon Benkin, and Walt Petito, they are constantly working on how many stories do you guys work on at a given time? How many concurrently would you say you're working on?
We juggle quite a few.
Juggle a lot.
I have like 6 that are relatively they're shot as in video recorded. But I have 12 I'm working on probably.
Right.
I'm a juggler. I'm a professional juggler, and it's hard. But you chip the stories I think we both work on. I can agree that you chip away at many of them because you don't get a lot of, yes, come on over, let's do this interview. You get a lot of denials. So you keep pushing and stuff
I'm impressed. 12. Yeah. How about you?
Sure.
All the point being is that all of us, again, we've talked about this, have been reporting on other stories over the last several weeks.
Yes, thank you. That's my point. I'm getting confused.
A lot goes on. Florida, people know. Lot goes on in Florida here in the United States. It's a very vibrant, I think that's a good fair word, right? A very vibrant news
Greatest state in the nation.
But you know what?
Sunshine
And
State.
people poke fun about that, the Florida man, that type of stuff. But let's think about the
JB's a
reality.
Florida man.
Right.
You're a Florida man.
No, but you know what I'm talking about. There's certain stories like.
Yes, I know.
But let's point it out. There's a lot of people coming in and out of the state right now. It's one of the fastest growing states in the country.
It's a great state.
We've got tons of different types of businesses going on here. So yeah,
The Tampa Bay area is such an amazing area.
Thriving.
Tom Brady. We're getting off topic. JB,
Go.
fix it.
We'll get to the next one, but really quickly, Jay Wade's comment has been up here for at least 5 minutes, and Jay Wade's thinking are just going to
Jay
leave me up.
Wade, we're sorry we ignored
On
you.
YouTube, again, hello to our YouTube audience. I see, including a lot of names out there, including Zombie Mom. Yeah, YouTube,
Zombie Mom.
All
Zombie Mom.
moms are Zombie Mom.
YouTube has a very vibrant set of eclectic names. Jay Wade on YouTube, hashtag HeyJB, hashtag HeyWalt, hashtag HeyMassa. Is there still a warrant out for Brian Laundrie? This is an interesting question semantically for a moment.
So
Because-
I'm on, by coincidence, JB.
Where
I'm
is
on,
that?
I'm
I
on
have
the
it.
Pacer. I'm on the Pacer
Here it is.
website.
Here it
I
is.
check it every day.
Yep.
I check the Pacer website
Do
every day.
you? Look at you. This is why he's the senior investigator.
And
I was
so
wondering, why is he senior?
warrant issued 9/22, 9/23. Now I will tell you on 9/27 the warrant returned unexecuted, and then the last filing here was 9/30. Notice of attorney appearance. It was about the U.S. attorney. There's nothing really in here, Moss.
I want to take a look at it.
Take a look. So my point is it still an active warrant?
Is it still for
So
the use of
purpose
unauthorized
the
access
warrant would
devices?
be, the purpose of the warrant is to have law enforcement be able to pick up Brian Laundrie everywhere to take him in. That's the warrant that was issued. And yeah, nobody's picking up Brian Laundrie. So
No.
I hate to answer questions without researching the questions first, but I would
that
say
warrant was reported unexecuted on the 27th when they were searching for Brian. So does that end the warrant? I don't know. Does the warrant give them any ability to investigate further and find more details? I would think they've pretty much gone through all the electronics they needed to go through. That would have helped them. But interesting question that the FBI would have to answer definitively, or the U.S. attorney.
Let's move on to question number 7 on our list. Again, all of these coming from WFLA.com. This is something I worked on over a couple of days with big shout out to Alexis and Heather on our digital team for helping out kind of aggregate the top 10 most unanswered questions that people shoot our way at WFLA, wanting answers on the Gabby Petito Brian Laundrie story, the Brian Laundrie investigation. So we'll go now to number 7 on that list, and if you want to just see what they are for yourself, click on the link in the description on this video. Yes, it's a plug. Facebook.com, YouTube, all of you, you can click on the link in the description on this video. It'll take you over to the full list where you can read it for yourself. Number 7, why do the Laundries continue to remain silent, and will they ever speak? And I'm talking here about Chris and Roberta Laundrie. We've heard from Cassie Laundrie. Cassie Laundrie, who you saw in video earlier, has come out. She came out of her home and she talked to demonstrators. She did multiple interviews with Good Morning America. But Chris and Roberta have virtually remained silent. And when I say silent, I mean silent to the public, silent to the media, and silent to Gabby's family in early September when they were just trying to locate her. More on that in a little bit. But why do the Laundries continue to remain silent? Will they ever speak? But let's make this first, before I get an answer or response from Massa and Walt here, let's make this very clear. Right now, they're remaining silent. They're grieving. They lost Brian, their 23-year-old son. Stephen Bertolino, the attorney, made it very clear in the News Nation interview that this is a family right now that is suffering just a tragic loss. And though Brian has been vilified by so many people in the court of public opinion or the court of social media, he is, to Chris and Roberta, he's still their son, and they are still grieving. And we don't know if they're ever going to speak. But to the first part of this question, and Massa, Walt, whoever wants to chime in here first, why are they, do you think that why are they silent, and do you think that there is any intention for them to come forward at some point and tell their side of the story?
Well, may I go first?
I don't. They don't have to talk. Why are they silent? They don't have to talk. They don't have to tell us anything. And I think they're mourning now. They it was a tragedy when the body was found for them. I mean, they knew the girl as well. They knew Gabby Petito. They knew her better than many people, right? Yeah. I mean, we can't assume, there have been some terrible things said about them unfairly, I think. We don't know anything about them. This has been traumatic from them for longer than just discovering Brian's body. They had to know something was wrong, right? So will they ever speak? They don't have to. My guess would be somebody will get them to speak. Is it us? I don't know, but I think it'll take time, but someone will get them to speak. But then the flip side of that is, what's the value for them in speaking? What is the value for a victim's parents, not a victim, I'm sorry, a suspect's parents, a person of interest's parents to speak? What's the value?
Stephen Bertolino has said that he is the one that told them immediately. Now, Stephen Bertolino's a long-time, can I say friend? Friend. He has known the Laundrie family for, was it more than 20 years? Sorry, guys, I'm forgetting all these intricate details that I used to know so easily. And he has said in multiple interviews, including to me, that he told them not to talk. There was no reason for them to talk, and he doesn't care what the public thinks about that. Obviously, trying to make sure there's no liability on their part in any way.
Well, right, and we mentioned the civil suit. That still could happen. And
right.
One of the very first statements, I have it right here, one of the very first statements Bertolino ever put out, September 15th, to the media at large. He said, the warning that any statement made will be used against you is true. So I think that is very much at the core of his representation of his clients, Chris and Roberta, that I'll do the talking. I think that would be, if Bertolino's law firm had a MO or a slogan, it would be, I'll do the talking. Because and I think that there are a lot of attorneys, Walt and Masa, you being a former New York City prosecutor, you could probably say the same thing, that's what you bring on an attorney to do, not just to give you legal advice, but to give you legal representation and to represent you in matters that can get legally complicated. And this is a situation for Chris and Roberta Laundrie. Does it get any more complicated than what has unfolded over the last 90 days on this story? So, yeah, there is a very good chance we never hear from Chris and Roberta Laundrie. Is that not a fact?
Well, I'd like to speak as a journalist now, not as an attorney, about will they ever speak. I think that human beings, they want to be understood. I think they certainly have a story to tell. I think that they have been vilified by so many people online.
No, I think as a journalist, that's sort of how you would approach them, right? If you were going to tell them, here's the value of why you should address the public.
If they want to clear their name,
right.
If they want to
clear something about Brian's name, or about why they didn't talk. I guess everybody thinks, why aren't you talking? Well, they don't have to talk.
Yeah. So I think that they 100. I think anyone would. Is possible. I think eventually people talk. Because I think that's human nature. You want to share, you want to be understood. So I expect to hear from them at some point.
I'll say this: you brought up documentaries earlier, and I know, and I'll just share this with our audience. There are tons of production companies right now working this. They've contacted WFLA. I know from speaking to Gabby's family that they have contacted Gabby Petito's family. Documentaries, when you're talking about, especially with Netflix and Hulu and Amazon Prime Video and all of these services, documentaries we have seen have really become mainstream, extraordinarily popular on streaming services. So I would imagine that documentaries right now, without question, are reaching out to the Laundries. If they're reaching out to the Petito and Schmidt families, then they are reaching out to the Laundries as well. Don't know if that's ever something that they would even pursue or even consider, but I would imagine that is at least being explored by production companies saying, hey, we will give you the very first opportunity to tell your story however you want to tell it, and here's the platform to do it. And we'll put you on Netflix, we'll put you on YouTube, or we'll put you on whatever service, whatever app is out there that has a sizable audience. So
I asked Mr. Bertolino, I reached out to him several times, making a case to why I should speak with Chris and Roberta Laundrie. So it's not just documentaries, JB. It's also
the news.
It's also me.
Masa,
right here. I'm trying to talk with them as well. But yeah, so, and my understanding is at this point, there's still, I haven't reached out to him in the past 2 weeks, just getting caught up in other things, but just giving them time to mourn. And I'll tell you what Mr. Bertolino told me when I made my pitch to him. He said, thank you so much. Just so you know, every reporter in the country has said essentially the same thing.
Yeah.
So,
so
how do they choose? Who do they speak with?
And by the way, some of those reporters and entities pay, and we don't do that.
No, we never would.
We're not going to do that.
But
there will be, and probably, I'm just going to guess, I'm sure there has already been some sort of cash offering to that family to talk.
Well, I wondered did Oprah Winfrey reach out to them yet? She often gets those interviews.
Dr. Phil spoke to
Dr. Phil.
Yep, Dr. Phil spoke to the Petito and Schmidt families. So
right.
It's only natural for this to be now the production companies just reaching out to both families to see, hey, would you like to tell your story? Really quickly before we move on to question number 6, I want to get to 2 questions that have come in on YouTube. Again, hello to our YouTube audience, hello to Facebook as well. Taking your bacon on YouTube. Hashtag Hey Walt, has either family spoke since they found Brian? I can take this one for Walt. The families right now are, again, to question number 7 and to this question from YouTube, the families are both grieving. We're talking about 2 families that are grieving and coming to terms with reality now that Gabby and Brian confirmed are deceased. So, and then Trish on YouTube, hashtag HeyJB, hashtag HeyWalt. I'll bring you guys up. Maybe we can give a quick response. We've got to get going here on this list. If there is a civil case, what would the charges be, and whom would file against who?
It could be wrongful death. You could have a wrongful death lawsuit. I don't know what OJ was accused of, or in the civil case, but it could be similar to that.
Specific charge,
I covered this at length. Let me go back to it. He was in a hotel room, and then
no. I'm talking about the murder. Well, not a murder, because he was acquitted, but
right.
It would be a wrongful death case. I would assume maybe a negligence count thrown in there. It can be any of those, and then of course that opens the door to being able to gather evidence. And what does the FBI do when you subpoena them for evidence? I don't know the answer to that.
They don't have to.
Let's go on to question number 6. Again, all of this on WFLA.com, the WFLA app. We are long-winded as we are here in WFLA now. So if you just want to see the list already of the top questions that we receive at WFLA on the Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie investigation, just click on the link in the description on the Facebook Live video, on YouTube Live, anywhere on social media. I posted it to my WFLA JB Twitter account. I'll post it to Instagram as well for that audience. Number 6, how did this one? YouTube's about to light up. I know YouTube. I know that audience, and YouTube's about to light up. Number 6, how did the federal search team miss the remains and Brian's belongings at the Carlton Reserve, but Brian's father strolls in one day and finds his son's bag so quickly? Who wants to? I am going to address this question, but Masa, Walt, who would like to take this one first? Because what this question really is, you have an expansive, massive federal, state, local, coordinated search effort at the Carlton Reserve. They look for weeks. They bring in utility vehicles. They're bringing in drones. They're bringing infrared technology. They are combing through every aspect or every area of the Carlton Reserve that they can. They don't find anything. And then all of a sudden, Brian Laundrie's father wakes up one day, says, all right, Roberta, let's get in the car. We're going over to the Carlton Reserve. We're going to look.
It's now
they hit
open.
Up the trail.
It's now open. Yep, the Makahatchee's now back open.
Yep, they hit up the trail, and within an hour,
they start at the beginning. Yep.
It's all found. The bag is found. It was all caught on camera. The bag was found, and then in that same area, the rest of it was found. The remains. Masa, what do you say to people when they say, "How did Brian's father find his son's bag and the belongings, but the federal search teams couldn't?"
Well, I just don't like the question seeming as if, something nefarious was done by the Laundrie family, because I think the question more is, hey, FBI, or hey, federal authorities, why did you open up the park when you hadn't completed a thorough search? Because parts of it were covered by water, and then when the water receded, you clearly did not look in that area again. You just opened the park back up. when I have been critical in the past of, federal authorities for this exact thing, I've been told, hey, you've never done a grid search. It's very difficult, but very clearly they have said this was an area that was underwater and then the water receded. So then why didn't you look? If the Laundrie family, as they say, through their attorney, had said this is one of the areas you need to look at, and if every time you went to go look at it, it was covered by water, then why didn't you go look at it again? So that's what I will say to that. We can go through like who found what, but I feel like that's asked and answered. People know that.
And I agree with Masa. It's a question that there's a certain insinuation there. Like, how could that happen? But I've never done a grid search. I've covered them, but then it's 30,000 acres of area out there. It's a lot. I lost my phone this morning in my home. I couldn't find it. I'm serious.
In your own house.
So what do you do when you lose something?
You ask your wife. You say, honey.
I did, and she actually gave me a clue about where it was.
Of course she did. We always do.
But what did she do? She thought back to where I saw it last. When you lose something, what do people say? Trace your steps. So there's logic to the fact that Brian, as far as the when is interesting, but Brian's father, maybe he's had enough of the wait. He said, let's go back to the first thing let's trace
Start from the beginning.
Steps.
Start from the beginning. That's what they did.
And they started from the beginning. And it happened to be that the water had receded. Now, do we know? Here's what we don't know.
Tell me, because
we don't know the body ended up in the water. The body could have been brought to the water by a wild animal. We don't know where the body was actually initially there.
We know that the Mustang was parked, and I hate that I don't remember the dates anymore. Wow. The Mustang was the
13th.
The 13th? Okay,
yes.
You're right. Good job.
September 13th. It was originally 13th.
the 14th. Yes.
And
That's good job.
then
September
2 weeks
13th.
later, we find out it's the 13th. It's a Monday.
Yeah. Okay, so September 13th, the Mustang was parked, and we know that the body was recovered, a short distance away from that, which you could make all sorts of, think about it, like, was this immediate? Whatever happened? Was
he there the whole time? Was he there and he came back to get water?
Who knows?
We don't know.
It could be anything. So we're not even going to get into it.
So I think we'll find out. I mean, if there was anything nefarious, as Masa said, I like that word. We'll find out, because I think and I don't suspect that at this point. I think
either.
They started. That's the logic, right? Where did you see your phone last, Walt? And I found it, and then
it was in his pocket. By the way, if you guys are wondering, it was right in his pocket.
But where did Brian go first? We told the FBI, let's start there and let's go out there.
Yeah. So they just got lucky.
The three on WFLA.com, I wrote the story, and I gave 3 answers to this question. Okay, I'll break it down here for you quickly. The 3 answers are, first and foremost, Brian Laundrie, his habits as far as where he liked to hike, that was best known by whom? His family. And while the investigators had gone to Chris and Roberta and said, hey, can you give us an idea as to where Brian liked to hike, actually being physically there, Chris Laundrie is able to give a better idea, being there on the premises, where the areas were that Brian liked to go hiking at the Carlton Reserve. Second, Mother Nature. Let's not forget that water was chest deep in some areas. I mean, we're talking about 75% of the Carlton Reserve completely, not like puddles, completely underwater when the search efforts began by the federal search teams. They had everything working against them. And so in October, the water had receded significantly, as Masa noted. And then number 3, to what Walt had noted here as well, I don't think the general public understands how big the Carlton Reserve is, and how vast it is, and how overwhelming it is, and how challenging it is.
And thick with brush.
It's alligators and snakes. It sounds awful.
Lions, tigers, and bears. Oh my! Yeah, no, it is.
You see it from the air. Oh, nice grasses and blah blah blah. But then you see
Try walking through it.
Right, and you see some of those machines that went through it. There was that one giant, I don't even know what it is, the swamp buggy, right? It was the swamp buggy.
Yeah.
And if you've ever walked through brush, I have. I've done that type of hiking. It's thick, and there aren't nice little neat trails. I think people think it's easier than it is.
It wasn't easy.
No.
It wasn't easy. So
difficult search.
Let's just make that clear. We're going to move on to question number 5. It comes in the form of these are the questions now. People, once we get into this top 5 section now, these are the questions that we get peppered with all the time, endlessly, on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, on everywhere. These are the questions that we've been getting. This next one comes in the form of a video question. I want to make sure that I have the name correct, and I believe it does. Yes, it's actually a two-part question, but we're going to start here with the question from Kim.
Hey JB, it's Kim in Oregon. My question is, has the police department or the FBI gone through Brian Laundrie's notebook, journal, whatever we want to call it? And if so, have they said anything about what was in it potentially? And then my other question is, has either the PD or the FBI done ballistics on the gun that was found in the lake near DeSoto Park, I believe it's called. So thanks. Love watching you guys. You're doing a great job.
Thank you, Kim. Let's start with that last question first. The gun that was found at Fort DeSoto Park, that's currently being Josh Benson here at WFLA News Channel 8's been all over that. He's got details on Twitter, but there's no known connection right now to the Laundrie family or any connection to this case. A gun, of course, was found at Fort DeSoto, but again, you have to be very careful about how you connect the dots in relation to that firearm. But let's go back to Kim's first question, the question that is number 5 on our list, the notebook. Endless questions out there about the notebook. I've said this five or six times, and I'll say it a 7th time. Okay. I still am in shock that they announced that Special Agent Michael McPherson at the press conference that day, October 20th, announced, or I believe it might have been October 21st, announced, no, it was the 20th. October 20th, Special Agent Michael McPherson of FBI Tampa announced that not only was a backpack found, but a notebook was found, because that piece of information just sent the internet into a tizzy.
It's like he's producing a newscast. I mean, it was a tease, right? And we haven't found anything about it as yet. And by the way, there were 2 bags. There were 2 bags found, a wet bag and the backpack, right?
There was a dry bag.
Dry bag. Well, it was a wet dry bag.
No, it's called
there
a
you
dry
go.
bag.
That's a good recovery there.
Okay, anyway. Great. But anyway, right.
Oh, I get it. It was wet at the time.
I'll explain
it was
to you
wet.
later. So again, a dry bag and a backpack. How many items were in those two bags? I would say several. And somehow they released the notebook, and it was very interesting, and you wonder, I've anticipated getting a hold of many interesting pieces of evidence in court cases, and I'm generally disappointed. So we could be very disappointed by the notebook. It might not say anything, but we want to see it.
It could be his artwork, yeah.
Could be anything. Well, even his artwork, though, that would be an interesting story to see his artwork.
Well, his artwork is all over Instagram.
What?
His artwork is all over Instagram.
Okay.
And his 66 posts.
That's fine.
Check it out.
You don't have to look at the notebook.
Amber Bray on YouTube,
can I
hashtag
say
HJB.
one
What about the notebook found? Will we know anything about it? Got others here from YouTube as well. Amber, thank you for your comment. Trisha Robinson on YouTube, hashtag HJB. Any word on if the notebook found with Brian's remains will be able to be dried / restored, and will its contents be released anytime soon? Tons of questions about the notebook.
Yes.
So Josh Taylor from Northport PD, who is just remarkable because he will just release things that you just did not expect. And he did tell our Allison Henning, 8 Untitled reporter for Sarasota County and Manatee, Allison Henning, that the notebook was, quote, wet, but also, quote, possibly salvageable. So we know that there is a process, that they do. They freeze it. Is that correct? They freeze the notebook. And
the FBI has, I've said this before, they have duct tape experts for court cases because of how often it's used in crimes. So I think if they have a notebook, even if the ink has run, they can examine that thing.
I don't understand your duct tape reference.
My point is they have so many experts and types.
Okay.
They have the best
So they could
crime
do
lab,
this,
I would
right.
think, in the world. I think a wet notebook, even if the ink has run, I don't think that's going to stop them. The paper, there's impressions left in paper, and there's plenty of ways to examine it. But again, let's go to this. If they want to examine it, do they want to spend any resources on a case that is not, Brian Laundrie's not a threat to the public. Punishing him does not set any example because you're not going to punish him. This case is not going to trial. Does the FBI still want to expend resources in their crime lab when there's plenty of other crimes to investigate? I say yes.
I say yes. They are going to try to dry it out. And there's this interview given to CNN by an expert that says that there are people within to your duct tape points. There are experts that spend their career drying up paper evidence, trying to recover the writing and the ink marks, look for fingerprints and relevant information. So good point, Walt.
Here's question 5B. I'm going to jump off of this question. 5B. And it's this. If they go through the notebook and there's nothing in there that definitively proves how Brian Laundrie passed away or how Gabby Petito died, or if there's nothing that is super pertinent to these investigations that are ongoing into the deaths of Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie, that notebook is still an object of fascination and still something that the FBI has obtained through legal means of conducting their investigation. Does the notebook, in that situation, Walt, or Massa, you being a former New York City prosecutor, does the notebook then ever get returned to the family because it has nothing to do with the ongoing investigation? Would the FBI say, you know what, we've gone through this, we know that it has sentimental, sympathetic value to the family, we went through it page by page, it doesn't contain any, smoking gun piece of information that we were looking for? Do they return it to Chris and Roberta Laundrie, or do they hold on to it?
I think they're obligated to return it to the Laundries. I think they are. It's not a murder weapon.
Right.
I mean,
it's part of the scene. It's part of the scene. It's part of very important evidence at the scene.
How important is the evidence?
I mean, I think it's like we found 4 things from him.
No, I guess my point is, it's a case. They're not building a case.
Or are they? You don't know that.
Well, okay,
they
so
totally
right,
could be.
if there's somebody,
the notebook could say, "I want to thank this person that you don't know anything."
In a TV show, that's
anything.
what it would say. I want to thank Joe Smith for helping me get this far. But
I don't think they're going to be returning it anytime soon. But listen, I haven't done extensive research on FBI protocol of returning things, but my intuition would be they're going to hold on to things like that and put it away in an evidence locker for the next
long time. It could be
for the next many years. That's my thought.
We may never know the contents of the notebook.
Yes.
They might not contain a single word. It could be art. It could be doodles. We don't know, but it's still the center of fascination and internet threads and online forums that continue to talk about what could be in the notebook. I'm very cognizant of Massa and Walt's time. They have other investigations that they need to pursue. We need to move a little bit quicker here. Can we go through to number 4, you guys?
Sure.
You ready to go?
Yep.
Okay, number 4 on our list. Why did the Laundrie family go camping at Fort DeSoto 6 days after Brian returned home without Gabby? What was discussed? The camping trip. This question is high up on this list because the camping trip is just so bizarre, is it not? Brian Laundrie returns home.
I'm not saying it's bizarre.
You don't believe it's bizarre?
I don't know how bizarre. I'm going to say I don't think it was bizarre for a couple of points.
Okay.
I don't think you get a spot at Fort DeSoto without thinking ahead months. That was Labor Day weekend, right?
It was September 6th.
So it was. You're not getting.
7th.
I don't think you're getting a spot there on a whim. So if you made that reservation,
know that for sure.
I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna take a pretty good. It's a pretty good guess. I do not know that, but let me put it this way.
Okay.
If you are gonna go on some retreat to discuss something that went wrong, you're going to Fort DeSoto. Why would you go to a public place? I don't think that's what you would do. I think you would go someplace that was more private. So.
I think a lot of people were rubbed the wrong way in the court of public opinion about the fact that they went and they had s'mores, but
do we know they had s'mores?
Yes.
Yes, they had s'mores.
That's
Where
right.
have you
We
been,
do know
Walt?
that. No, I remember that.
Mr. Bateau, the viewers are alarmed.
I was reflecting on the fact that I thought that was a JB metaphor that he had simply said it, but it's a fact. They had s'mores.
It's a fact. They had
s'mores.
No,
it was.
Laundrie said.
Hold on, time out.
And
it
JB
was.
said s'mores. JB.
I said before that was dropped by Cassie Laundrie was the one who said we were at
s'mores.
We were at Fort DeSoto and we had s'mores, and I said days beforehand, I said, what are you doing at Fort DeSoto? Are you just sitting around a campfire eating s'mores?
To be fair, that's what everyone does.
And that's exactly what they were doing.
And the answer
that is
was
what they were making s'mores. Yeah, they were
So,
hanging out with the kids.
If Brian, let me explain, and the comment section is now lighting up as to whether or not. Let us know. You know what? Hey, YouTube, thumbs up. Give me a thumbs up emoji if you think it's bizarre. The camping trip is bizarre. Give me a thumbs down emoji if you just think there's nothing weird about it. Here's what I'm going to say. Brian Laundrie returns home for the second time now. You have to remember, he flew home for a period of 6 days in August. Drives home in the Ford white van on September 1st. Okay, he's without his fiance. Gabby, he left Gabby for the second time now. He left Gabby. He's all at home with his family in Northport. We don't know the circumstances. We don't know.
By the way, the date he drove back, refresh my memory. What's the date he drove back?
I'm seeing a lot of emojis now, thumbs up. He drove back. The vehicle was tagged as far as returning back to Florida
11th.
On September 1st.
So
September 1st,
she's already dead. According to the FBI, she's already dead.
Yeah.
Right. So
I'm pulling
he's
up
home.
the timeline.
We don't know what he's aware of. Of course, the internet wants to, of course, just
September 1st.
assume that he was aware or
missing.
directly responsible for what happened to Gabby. And I know that the internet has convicted him in the court of public opinion in that way, or at least most have. But he returns home, and he's home, and whether or not he acknowledged something happened where you do not come home with your fiance. Your fiance is left midway or not through an uncompleted cross-country road trip that you started from long. There were other areas you were supposed to go. There were other areas. There was more road trip to be had, and you return home abruptly on September 1st for the second time in 2 weeks. You're at home and you're there in the house in Northport, and then 6 days later, the let's go on a family camping trip. It seems. Let's put it this way. If it were me or if it were others in our comment section, we've talked about it on previous streams. If you were aware of something terrible that had happened to the person that you were going to spend the rest of your life with, is camping high on your priority list?
Well, I mean, on my priority list,
Is that
no. But,
but that's an opinion.
Right, that's my priority list.
We don't have opinions.
I'm not from a camping family.
And I'll tell you that, what if you're so upset
context.
and you need to go into nature?
I'm speaking as to why the internet finds this bizarre.
Okay, fine.
I got you. Okay.
You can speak to
and why
yes.
they have
the internet
bizarre
does.
is the word I think that I'm using to sum up the response to this.
Okay, that's fine.
Online, the Fort DeSoto camping trip, and I definitely saw more thumbs up in the comment section than I saw thumbs down. But it's just a little peculiar in the estimations of men.
People were upset.
Yeah,
You can say that.
They
People
are.
were
And
upset about
I
that. That
think
turned off people.
I get it. And because the optics are bad. The optics are bad.
We can safely say that.
Right.
Let me pose it to you this way. If Brian Laundrie came home and had no idea and authentically did not know where Gabby was, and Gabby's life was in danger, and his fiance really was missing, why are you camping and not searching? That's really what it comes down to. It's behavior that doesn't add up for somebody who is engaged to spend the rest of their life with their 22-year-old fiance.
That is a really good point, and yes, that's why I think that hits the nail on the head. And then it brings to the question is, what did people know and when did they know it? At that point, we suspect that Brian knew there was no reason to search, right? I mean, we suspect that at least. That on that date, Brian knew there was no reason to search.
No comment there.
Okay, let's move on to the third question here on our list. I think I speak for a majority of people in our Facebook Live and YouTube Live comment section that just look at the Fort DeSoto camping trip and say, Gabby, first, let's also not forget that you're not answering Nicole Schmidt, Gabby's mother and father. You're not answering the phone calls from Gabby's family. You're not answering their text messages. You're purposefully, or as we understand, maybe not purposefully, but you're not returning those calls or text messages. But you have the presence of mind to go camping, do a family camping trip. I just think that I speak for a lot of folks online, speak a lot for the people that message us and our audience members here, our viewers on WFLA Now, that just look at the Fort DeSoto camping trip there on September 6th and September 7th and say, something's weird. Something's fishy. Something doesn't feel right. Let's get on to the next one here, number 3 on our list. And it's, again, this goes back to a little tied into the camping trip. People want to know.
One of the biggest questions in my world. Right there.
Brian Laundrie returns home on September 1st. What did Brian Laundrie tell his parents upon returning home from the trip without Gabby? Was Brian honest? Was there some deceit? Some lie, some knowledge that he had that he did not share, intentionally not share with his parents? This has been a major question asked online because people want this goes back to previous questions, and Walt, you were referencing earlier when we were talking about how there's no charges filed right now in the deaths of Gabby or in the death of Brian. There's the one charge for credit card fraud, but that's an arbitrary sort of charge that was put out. That's not directly connected to the deaths of Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie. So people want to know if there's ever going to be charges filed, because there are people out there who believe that Chris and Roberta, if they're not answering questions from Gabby's family, then they were given information or they were cognizant of information that on what had happened to her. Now, again, we're now going down the rabbit hole. We got to be careful. We have to be careful with how we discuss this. But this Walt Massa, what Brian Laundrie's parents knew in early September has been discussed through and through widely on every forum connected to this story. And really, this was a question that this question goes back quite literally to day one of this story.
You cannot say that, we cannot definitively in any way say he is a person of interest in the murder of Gabby Petito, which is the latest phrasing of the FBI, correct, Walt?
Yeah.
Okay, so we cannot definitively say that he did it and he has not been convicted, and authorities have not said that. So first, you can't say that he definitively did anything. And then second, we have no clue what, if anything, he told his parents. I mean, just all you parents out there, your kids don't always tell you the truth, and just human nature. Like, let's say I hate to play hypotheticals, but let's say that there was any at all wrongdoing. People can spin things. People can spin.
Walt, if you'd like to read this comment from Martha.
Any parent would ask where she was. I think that's probably true. But the other, to Moss's point, we also don't. There's so many things we don't know. We don't know the relationship between Brian and his parents. We don't know how open they are. We all deal with our parents differently. I have children; they're all different. So we don't know what they would have or would not have talked about. And by the way, none of this, according to the FBI, no discussion, no matter what it was about, would have, according to the FBI, would have saved Gabby Petito, because she was already deceased.
That's a good point.
So what does it do theoretically? What does a conversation do? Does it allow for an earlier arrest? Does it allow for the case for someone to go from person of interest? I'm speaking hypothetically, for someone to go from person of interest to suspect and allow for an arrest, and then we actually have a trial? Is that what we're thinking? I mean, at this point, there's roughly 12 days where we know Brian was around and around his parents, including the camping trip, because he came back on the 1st, left on the 13th. Whatever they discussed, I'm going to ask what may seem like a silly question, but why is it important?
Most of your questions are silly.
Why is it important what they discussed? Why does it matter?
Because I think people want to know if the parents had any, if the parents helped assist in any way that would be improper.
Sure.
So they want to know. So that's why.
Okay.
Let's go over this hypothetical. Let's go over this. Let's also not forget Josh Taylor of Northport Police telling WFLA on October 26th that this was again. Remember when police admitted that there was a mix-up where they thought they saw Brian. It was actually Roberta Laundrie, and he said that there was a lack of cooperation from the family early on in this investigation. Here's what I think people are thinking at home, and this is Massa is a legal expert. Walt, of course, brings his long investigative expertise to the table.
Years and years.
What I try to bring to the table is that common sense thread of thinking from what people online are thinking when they watch our streams.
And you're amazing at it, JB. You're the best.
But it's more just because I spend so many time reading people's comments and questions, so I have a better understanding of exactly what.
Your fingers on the pulse.
If Chris and Roberta Laundrie, we're going down the rabbit hole. Bear with us. If Brian Laundrie did tell his parents that something had happened, and he got back from the trip and something terrible had happened, and Chris and Roberta Laundrie were aware of it, Chris and Roberta Laundrie had the opportunity to go to the police or to talk to Brian and say, Brian, you need to go to the police. You need to tell them what you know. And if Brian Laundrie directly approaches the police, or if Chris and Roberta do on his behalf, is there a chance that Brian Laundrie is still alive today? I'm talking about first week of September. If he, again, we're going really deep down the rabbit hole now, but if Brian Laundrie does come home, and so many parents have gotten a hold of me and said, if it was my kid, I would tell them to turn themselves in. You do the right thing. You have to be a person of accountability in this world, a person of integrity. You turn yourself in. If Brian Laundrie does, I mean, listen, we don't know. We don't know with concrete certainty what he had to do, if anything, with Gabby Petito's death, with her murder. But if he does come home, talk to his mom and dad, they have a conversation, they acknowledge that something terrible had actually happened on the road, on the cross-country trip, Chris and Roberta Laundrie having that conversation with Brian, if they say, we have to approach the police and talk about this, is there a chance that Brian Laundrie is still alive because he would have gone to the police and they would have had a potential confession on their hands?
There's always a chance. Yeah, I think that's the theory, is that perhaps is fueling the anger, right? Is that people want these answers. Well, we would get these answers, all of them, if there was a trial. And there still may be a civil trial, but if there was a criminal trial, we would get all these answers. It would be a year out. We still wouldn't know them right now, but unless there was an arrest warrant along those lines. So yeah, there's a chance he'd still be alive, obviously.
Masa, real quick before we go on to the next question, anything to add?
I think that if he did not go into the park, he could still be alive. If he did not leave on September 13th.
Right.
Next question, down to number 2 here. We got to move along here. Number 2 on WFLA.com. Again, the questions that people send our way the most. Why didn't the Laundries return any calls or texts from Gabby's family when they were trying to locate her? I'm going to quote 8 on your side investigator Masa Saidi and what she said earlier. The response to this,
I don't know what he's going to say,
is that Bertolino told them not to.
Okay.
That attorney Stephen Bertolino said, don't talk until you consult with me first, and again, remain silent. And when you have the right to remain silent, that's to law enforcement, that's to the media, that's to the public, and that's to Gabby Petito's family. So why didn't the Laundries return any calls or texts from Gabby's family when they were just trying to locate her? Well,
can I take a call? Be back in 10 seconds.
You can.
That's probably the first question you ask the Laundries if you have an opportunity to interview them, is why. Because, parent to parent, and again, this was your daughter-in-law, your future daughter-in-law. She lived with you. Parent to parent, this is frustrating, I'm sure, for viewers and readers as to why they wouldn't answer that. Could they have answered them? I mean, if they're worried about self-incrimination or they're worried about what their attorney said, it just still seems just courtesy to answer and say, we don't know, or I guess you get on a slippery slope if they do know something. And
right, you're around the surface of what is really at the core of this is what people have been saying online. If you had no real knowledge of what had happened to Gabby, and if you were as desperate and clueless as to her whereabouts and desperate to find her, just like the Petitos and just like the Schmidts were, why didn't you cooperate? Why wouldn't you say, oh my goodness, we don't know where Gabby is either. We need to help. Let's team up and let's do everything that we can to get Gabby home safely.
And if you did know something and you said what you just said, we don't know either, but you did know, it's not exactly perjury, but it is right. Fuel for a question perhaps down the road, in a court case. So yeah, it is, that's puzzling. We don't know if this has ever happened before with a missing person case. Maybe it has, but just to answer a text early on, I mean, I get the frustration of the viewer and especially of the Petitos.
Can you imagine being a parent for a moment and your child, Walt, is missing, and the only people that might have information talking about your future son-in-law in this case and your future in-laws, the only people that might have an inclination as to what happened to your child, your daughter in this case, and you're trying to get a hold of them. You're in New York and you're trying to get a hold of them, and they just don't pick up the phone, or they leave you on red via text message. They days and days and days go by, and you know that they're on their phones because everyone's on their phones all the time.
Sure.
And they're just not responding. I'm putting myself in the shoes of Gabby's mom and dad, who must have been willing to throw their phone through a wall in that moment, because days would go by and they cannot get an answer from the Laundries, including Brian, as to where Gabby was, when they were just trying so desperately to find on a map where she was located.
And Mrs. Schmidt, Gabby's mom, had said after she had lost track of her daughter for 8 to 9 days, she started to worry. That brings us from the 27th to about the 3rd or 4th of September. Now you're starting to worry, and you're not getting answers when you text the family. But here's an unknown. We don't know this. Yep. Maybe you do. You've had more contact with the Petitos and Miss Schmidt. How tight were these future in-laws before this happened? Were they close? Were they not close? Did they say
cordial? As I understand it, it was a cordial relationship between two families that were going to be one in whenever Gabby and Brian were going to tie the knot.
So, I mean, along those lines, could have they said, "Oh, they're just busy"? Oh, because you don't automatically. And with kids, maybe you do. When you have kids, you worry about them every single day. Mm-hmm. The littlest thing, your mind can wander and go, "Oh, this could be bad." And so these are worried parents. And then, of course, 6 or 7 days after that 8-day period that Mrs. Schmidt talked about, the missing person case is filed. But you wonder how many texts were there. I don't know if we know that. How many calls were there? Was there a call a day? Was it a text a day? Because the more you don't get answers, the more frustrated you are, and you probably fly down here, which they eventually did by the 13th or that weekend. So, I get the frustration with this and that question.
Let's move on. I'm not sure if Masa might have gotten a very important phone call connected to another story that she is following, but without further ado, and folks, it's no real surprise here, the number one question that we get asked time and time again on this story, and it's quite simply, it's the shortest one of all of them. Why is Gabby dead? Why is Brian dead? Why did this happen? And this is a question that it's the ultimate overarching question to this story. It's one that is not, if it is answered one day, it's not a short answer. It's a long, complicated, drawn-out answer, one that would be very difficult, I'm sure, to really comb through the details without knowing the dynamic between these two. But when people do start to have this conversation to answer this question, Walt, online, the first thing that gets brought up usually is Moab, the incident that happened in Moab. Gabby and Brian were so visible on social media, and one of the reasons why this story took off the way that it did, they were so public of a couple. 23, 22 years old, sharing everything that they did on this cross-country trip together. All the highlights. But they didn't share the lowlights. The highlights were there, but we didn't see the lowlights. And this is a true tale for every couple on social media. All couples, myself included. Sure. I'm going to post all the highlights with my wife. If my wife and I do get into a disagreement, I'm not going to post about it online. We only post the good. We don't post the bad or the ugly. Right. And this was a story where the ugly, a certain side of the dynamic between Gabby and Brian came out very publicly and was put under the microscope in the domestic dispute incident that occurred in August, when Moab police had them on the side of the road for more than an hour and they were trying to best assess the situation. But it showed that this couple that seemed very happy-go-lucky and very, very much in love and ready to spend the rest of their life, it wasn't just. And how can you expect it to be? Couples do go through trials and tribulations in addition to tremendous great times on vacation, or in this case, on going on adventures.
And road trips are stressful.
They are extremely stressful.
Very stressful. Young couple dealing with that. But you know, the why in the 5 W's and the 1 H, the what, when, where, how, why, and who. The why is always the most puzzling, because why can be a philosophical question.
Yes,
right?
That's what I was trying to get at a little bit earlier.
And then it could also be, but it could also be, is there? And let's go to the philosophical. I like to think that there's a meaning for everything that happens to some degree. I mean, and the one thing I've noticed on Twitter, I noticed this just yesterday. I was at my son's soccer practice, and I'm noticing the community that's developed on Twitter, including one particular woman who said she'd gone through this great trauma and now has decided to help domestic violence victims and work on those cases. If there's a why, a philosophical why, is it to make us more aware of those friends of ours that everything looks, you know, great on Facebook and on social media, but we know a few things where maybe they need some help. And who, in this case, knew where this young couple needed some help or to break up? All of that. Is that the why? Is that the greater question? A foundation has been started. I don't know if it's started officially in Gabby Petito's name. Is that the why? Is there an advantage to that? Is that going to help others? And I just notice that part of this case has really energized a lot of people, at least on social media, microcosm, right? But it's energized people, and if you're trying to make this make sense, to me, that's a value. When we report the stories about these horrible domestic violence cases, it's not because if it bleeds, it leads. It's not that. The value of the story is awareness. In all of these cases that we report, and people go, this is horrible. No, it's about awareness. It's about letting somebody know, hey, this could happen to you. Get out, get help. And in this case, maybe that's what's happened with the Petito case, because it's been so profiled. That would be my best why, as why they are both dead.
There's going to be more conversations about domestic violence awareness. I was part of a charity stream recently that raised money for Sunrise Shelter of Pasco County, of the Tampa Bay area, a domestic violence shelter here in our area. Yeah, it's very important that we do our very best here to talk about the issues. Talk about the issues at the center of a case like this. And the domestic, in my conversations with Joe Potito, with Gabby's dad, it is so present on his mind that more needs to happen in these conversations with domestic violence awareness. It's one thing to be aware. It's another thing to actually participate in change. And what needs to change? How can we be better? And so I'm glad, Walt, that you kind of brought that up. Masa, welcome back.
I mean, thank you for having me. I'm so sorry I left, guys. It was critically important, so I apologize. That was rude. But
lunch order?
Walt is a funny guy over here. I love Walt. What I would say is, I know everyone thinks it's pretty easy to, determine what happened here, and there's reporters that are always dancing around it. But what we can say is that this was, I feel comfortable after looking at the August 12th video in Moab, Utah, saying that this was toxic. The relationship was getting a little toxic, and a timeout would have been good for everyone involved. And I just think, it's very difficult, especially for young girls, when you're in love. It's difficult to, you saw in that video that she did not even want to be away from him for that night. So there are no easy answers here.
No,
I think it's very difficult to leave. We're not saying that it was domestic violence here. We don't know that confirmed by anyone.
Well, we do know there was alleged domestic violence.
Yes, there was alleged. Yes, no. But I'm saying we don't know that caused the death. Is what I'm saying. Yeah.
No, right.
But yes, there was slapping back and forth, and there was, but it's just very, very difficult. It's very difficult.
It is, because again, you're admitting failure, and not only, and that's in a relationship where it might be in an apartment somewhere, in a house somewhere. You're admitting failure, and that's a hard thing. You probably
you're in love.
You love that person, so you believe they can change. I've heard all these things from people, and you're admitting failure, and then the other part of it is, in this particular case, you're on a road trip to start a career. You're trying to start,
yeah.
And I also know that a day off. What if a day off? They got a night off from each other.
I think they would have needed a couple months
They
off.
would have
I
needed
think
months off. So
I think you need
and
some
these are
months off. I
adults.
think you need therapy. I think you need to
Right.
come back.
Right.
We don't want to say
How are
to
they
anybody-
coming
yeah.
home though? They're not 17 and 16. They're 23 and 22. Is somebody going to go out and pick them up and bring them home?
Yeah, yeah.
They're young adults. So
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if that would have solved this. I think what you said is right. They needed a month off. They needed a couple. They needed therapy.
It's hard.
They're in the middle of nowhere.
But when
literally
you're
the
in
middle
that
of nowhere.
situation and when you're in love, it's hard to, at that
I
age,
agree.
with that maturity
Absolutely.
level.
Right.
It's hard for
You wanna
anyone
believe
to.
it's gonna
When you
work.
love, you love, and
Right.
it's hard to. Yeah, and so
You
that's
want to
going to have.
believe, yes.
You have to teach people to love themselves. You have to teach people to make very difficult decisions, and I think that's a much more difficult thing
It's hard,
to change.
and
in the world.
I've covered horrible court cases with just terrible abuse of children and
That I
women
can't
mostly.
stand.
It's
Yeah.
mostly
Yeah.
women,
Yeah.
sadly.
Can't stand.
And we have, but in those cases, the children still want to stay with the parents.
Yeah.
We're-
Oh, you're gonna make me cry talking
No,
about
it's the
children.
truth,
Don't talk
and
about
no,
children.
it is, and they still trust the parents, and the same with the spouse.
I think clearly when it's getting very any physical at all. I can't believe I said when it's getting very
You're
physical.
right.
What a dumb thing to
Any
say.
physicality at all.
Any physicality.
Something
at all.
has to happen.
I think you have to at that point you have to choose yourself.
1,000,000%.
Yeah, but it's teaching people that to value themselves.
That's
so,
right.
Yeah.
That's a
Sorry,
good part of the why.
That was a lot, JB. I'm sorry.
The zero tolerance part in
Yeah.
a relationship, I think. There's no,
Love
I hate
yourself
him once.
first.
No, I'm
Get
sorry.
help. Take a break
Physicality
and
has
get help.
crossed the
Yeah.
line that just should not happen.
Because a lot of times when you get a break for several months, you kind of snap out of it. People get addicted to having that person there. Like you get addicted to talking with them. You get addicted to seeing them. You get addicted to sharing your life with them. You're not like giving time and energy to other people. And a timeout is a timeout and getting help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a why for you.
And one more. Can I say one more?
Sure, yeah.
Missing persons cases. I think that's another positive.
So
you're right.
that's a good
Yeah,
segue because
yeah.
we know that Governor DeSantis in Florida has had a conversation with Joe Petito, and I know from conversations with Gabby's family that they want to see change, and that's not something that they take lightly. They are very passionately pursuing change in their states, in New York, in Florida, and really across the country, trying to help people so that this doesn't happen ever again, or at least this doesn't happen with the same frequency as far as terrible, terrible tragedies involving domestic
The one
disputes.
point on the missing person cases that is especially sad in this case, though, is by the time she was a missing person case, she was already no longer with us. And she was, by the time Brian Laundrie was driving home on the 1st, according to the FBI, she was dead. She was dead sometime between, we think, the 27th and the 30th.
You did a really good job. Walt took a very close look at the indictment and also comparing that to the FBI news release.
Right,
Like,
so
people
they-
are like, "Where's this guy getting this information?"
So the missing person
Yeah, he
part
did
of
a very
it
good
is
job with that.
important, but I will say it's ironic because while this was a missing person case, she was not going to be found. Sadly, I mean it's horrible, but she was not going to be found alive. But others could be, and maybe even just, I hate the word closure, but even investigating them too, because we get parents who call us about missing person cases, but it's a high bar for us to do the story. We can't necessarily do
Can we
all of
talk
them.
about that really quick, or do
Yeah.
we have to go?
Go.
No, you start talking about it.
No, well, I mean,
Well,
it's a high bar because because a lot of them end up being somebody wants to go. Many of them end up that way. Domestic cases are tough for us to report on because we're generally getting one side of it. We're not getting both sides. If police aren't involved, it's hard for us to just do missing person stories.
I have never in my life, but can I just say, if you are in the Tampa Bay area and if there's a missing persons case, and if you're working with law enforcement, I guess even if you're not, reach out to me because I want to start to look into this stuff. So reach out to me. But can I just say in 4
you said
seconds?
Never in your life.
We're not ending this conversation. We're gonna use this to jump off to one last point. But Masa,
I want to hear what never in your life part.
Never in my life has a newsroom given me, and maybe this will change now. I actually think it could change, but never in my life has a newsroom given me approval to work on a missing persons case if law enforcement doesn't say, "Yep, we're concerned." So that it's very.
It's a really good point.
Yeah, they don't let you do it. People are like, "Why aren't you doing it?" It's not up to me.
We're going to have one more conversation to end out our stream, but that's the list, the 10 questions that we get the most.
Nice job on the article too, JB.
Thank you. Really good job.
Did you guys were in it. Thank you for participating. It was kind of like a round table sort of.
Oh, I can't write that well. Sorry. I was like, this is written really well. Why are you laughing? It's my second language. Stop judging. Writing for television is not newspaper writing.
Masa
As you can tell, just look at my scripts. Like, you'll know.
Are in the story that you can read right now on WFLA.com, the WFLA app. Yes, I wrote it for WFLA.com, the WFLA app, and you, wherever you're watching from, our audience watching from around the world. Just click on the link in the Facebook description, the YouTube video description, and it'll take you over there, and you can read more of an in-depth explanation. It's almost like 10 little micro articles in one, talking about the top questions that approaching mid-November here remain unanswered. The very final conversation that we are going to have here before we have to go, and we do have to go, it comes in the form of a video question. This one came in from Cassidy.
Hey JB, hey Mosh, hope you guys are staying safe from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So my question is, I understand this case is a very serious case, but my question is, why do you guys think this case has gotten so much national media attention compared to other cases just similar to this one that doesn't get as much attention?
So let's make this very clear, and this is the jumping off point I was talking about with Masa a moment ago, that more missing person cases do need more exposure. We are very honed into, WFLA, very honed into the Tampa Bay area. We of course, serve our market on the Tampa Bay, in the Tampa Bay region of Florida, but we know that there are thousands, tens of thousands of missing person cases across the country. But when we get one from our local law enforcement agencies, we're on it right away, trying to spread the word, trying to let people know as much as we can that somebody is missing and somebody could potentially be in danger. And we talk about, Amber Alerts and missing person cases. It's something that is very much part of the DNA that is the news operation that is WFLA News Channel 8 on your side here in Tampa, Florida. But to Cassidy's question, and we'll end out on this here from you, Walt and Masa, why did this story, in your opinion, receive so much attention is the question from Cassidy. And what can we do for there to be additional exposure to other missing person cases here across the United States?
There's one thing you can't do because in this particular case, this person put her personality and her face and her video and her pictures out there for a month before, 2 months before this actually came into our view, right? So
several years, but yes.
But the visuals were what I think made this case a natural for newsrooms to pursue. That may sound shallow, but there's two parts to what we do. There's the script, as Masa talked about, but there's the visual, and you got to see the human being here, and we don't generally get to do that.
That's the truth.
And this case also exploded as well because of the technology of the encounter that seemed to be the beginning of the end of this relationship at least, and maybe something worse than that. The video that you did a story on early on of the body camera video again, and then I think that's what brought in an international audience, right? Yeah. I mean, because we feel like we knew her probably more than any other missing person case I can remember in the history of, if you look back in history, name another missing person case where we had this many visuals of the person and the person of interest. I can't think of one.
And people were so interested in this because, as you said, Walt, there was so much out there. It was all accessible to everyone. So people just became personally involved in this case. They connected with her. And certainly, she deserved it. She deserved everyone trying to find her. But yes. Can I be honest for a second? I did at times feel, guilty at the fact that we can't give this type of attention to, you know, other cases, which is why I'm going to be trying to highlight missing persons cases here in the Tampa Bay area. So please, 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 if someone you love went missing in the Tampa Bay area, contact me. So that's another positive thing that can come about it. But I did feel, you know, because people would send me mean messages and they would say, why aren't you, there was a father, you know, and nice messages sometimes. There was a dad whose child is just getting some attention now. I know News Nation did a story on it, went missing and out west. And, you know, he reached out to me and I felt so bad because it's not in my jurisdiction.
No,
So I
it's not-
can't do
it's
it.
not
I can't
our
do
area.
it because I'm a local news reporter. But
As you request that and as you send ideas to Masa, I think that's a great idea, by the way, because, and again, we won't be able to do all of them, but you might be able to do vignettes on the internet and more on TV. But as you do that with these cases,
Good
it's
word,
the
vignette.
visual is really important.
Yeah.
To have video of the person, not that we wouldn't do it without it, but to have video and pictures. And the video is important because the video shows will display personality. Personality draws the viewer in. They're going to be more interested. And I think that's what happened with the Petito case. But I hope that they let you do that. I think that's a good idea. There
Yeah.
are those cases out there, and we have a big coverage area where you know there are cases
know
out there
there
that are solvable.
Right.
Because that's what you want. You want
Yes.
a solvable missing person case.
yes, that's exactly right,
Yeah.
Walt. And what Walt was talking about was just something with television, and that's why I'm very envious of newspaper reporters because they don't need things that we need. Like we need people to talk to us on camera. We need pictures. We need video. And don't get mad at us. It's because we can't just stand in front of the TV and just
Right.
talk. Then the viewers will say, well,
right.
what's, you know, so
That's,
it's
and
just
that's
a different.
why this case exploded.
That's
Because
one of the absolutely,
personalities
yeah.
and vision. Not that it wouldn't have anyway, but I think you empathized more with the Petitos because you think you knew Gabby because of what
right.
you saw her.
But in this day and age, people have video of everyone
Sure.
when they go missing. So
No, I agree.
that's the hope. But JB?
I think that it comes down to, you guys hit the nail right on the head, and I'll just kind of jump off of that. The accessibility, the public faces that were on social media, Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie. I'll just kind of jump off of that and say that there was a relatability to this story. How many people have gone on a long road trip with a loved one? And there are great times, and then there are times where you want to smack them on the side of the head because
with
you're
Walt,
because
most
you're
of the
just
time with Walt.
you're so frustrated. Maybe
Great road trip.
maybe they hog the Cheetos, or you're doing or
Got to give me my Cheetos, man.
you know what I'm saying.
And my s'mores.
And
There
just
was a re-
talking, the endless talking of Walt.
Endless talking.
Endless
Well, no, think of the things that go
How about-
wrong.
how about-
Masa is so fresh. She's very fresh. But think of all the things that go wrong on a road trip. You know, you took the wrong
Gas,
turn.
yeah.
Why didn't you take the
Yeah.
wrong turn?
It's hot.
Or I got a headache. Or
I'm
I don't
cold,
like-
you're
I don't
hot.
like that music station.
That
or,
was-
My back is killing me. So
right.
glad we're
I mean,
gonna
so
end it soon,
yeah, it's not.
Why don't you
forget
take
that.
over some of the driving? Why am I doing all the driving? Why don't you change
Right.
to this
Sounds like
radio
my
station or that radio
photographer
station?
job.
I want to listen to talk. I want to listen to this podcast or that podcast or this Spotify playlist or that Spotify playlist. So there's first and foremost, there's a relatability because we've all been on long road trips.
Yes.
We've all been with that significant other, with a family member, somebody in your inner circle as far as your family or your friends. And we know what a long road trip is like. But this one ended with tragedy.
Yeah.
And people wanted answers to questions. And every time that it felt like we were closer to getting answers, it eluded us. Or at least it provided an answer that then produced more questions. I mean, there were so many answers that we received over the course of this story that then, you know, Fort DeSoto is one of them. We find out about the Fort DeSoto trip, the camping trip, and then
Twists
it
and
launches
turns of this
into a
story.
million
I will
other
never get over
questions.
the twists and turns of this story.
The
JB.
rumors early on. There were rumors early on. My wife told me about that. Hey,
Hold on,
did you
JB
hear?
wants to finish his point.
I'm sorry. Go
No,
ahead,
no,
go
no, no.
ahead.
Walt.
No, did you? The rumors early on. Hey, did you hear that Brian came home and went back? And I remember thinking that didn't happen.
Right.
And it did happen.
The 6-day flight.
The 6-day flight. Right.
to get the storage.
Crazy.
To close down
There
the
were-
storage locker room.
There were a lot of flare-ups of rumors on social media that turned into something big, and then there were a lot of many more flare-ups that turned into absolutely nothing. People wanted answers. There was a real sort of online sleuthing that went on
Yeah,
with
it's
this
still going
story. Still going on with this story, and that's one of the reasons why people have followed this one. But I think all of us here at WFLA, we are so committed to sharing stories of missing persons.
Yes.
As soon as it comes into our newsroom from the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office
Send
or
it to me.
from Northport Police or
From the
from
family, no. It's
from
my-
Newport
I'm doing
Richie
it.
or from
Kristen,
Pinellas
I'm
County,
doing it.
wherever it's
It's a good
coming in
idea.
from.
I will
You have
send it
12
to you.
stories. You said you have
Okay,
12 stories
you're right.
earlier.
She's right. a good point.
We'll let Masa and Walt go. Guys,
Squabbling.
thanks so much for joining us here, everybody.
Thank you, JB.
Bye.
Nice
We
job
love
as
all
always.
of you.
Thank
JB,
you.
you're the best.
Thank you, guys.
JB is the best.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Web stories, JB, you're so good.
See what I write a long form story, and now everybody wants me to write their stories. Masa Saidi, Walt Petito, you'll see them, everybody, tonight on WFLA News Channel 8. Let me explain where this goes from here. People want to know, okay, what's next? It's clearly why we're here live. We are awaiting the next information drop. It's likely going to come from a law enforcement agency, or it might come from Laundrie's, the Laundrie family attorney, Stephen Bertolino. We want there to be an update on this story that we can share, of course. And the moment that we do get that information, we can share it with you. But right now, the normal sources of information that we've been getting information from on this story has gone cold, so to speak. We're awaiting the cause of death to be revealed and for Brian Laundrie once the anthropology examination is concluded. When that is done and the FBI then gets that report back, they will in all likelihood, they will share it, or the Sarasota County Medical Examiner, that district medical examiner, will then share it, Dr. Vega. We don't know exactly where it's going to go and when it's going to happen, but we anticipate sometime in the next 3 weeks or so that we will hopefully, based on expert timelines, we will learn more about the cause of death for Brian Laundrie. And then that is then once we get that piece of information, we can then start to ask follow-up questions, because that's the next logical step as far as information that is going to be made public on this story. At that point, when we receive that, then it's very much, okay, where does it go from there? When are we going to find out the cause of death for, or excuse me, the who murdered Gabby Petito? There are so many unanswered questions that remain. That's why we have this story for you on WFLA.com. So where this goes from here, we are on standby for any new information from the FBI in Tampa or FBI Denver. That's the lead investigative agency on this case. If anything happens, any new information, it's a tweet out of nowhere, a piece of information, a press release, or a Bertolino text, anything that happens completely out of the blue, we're here live for you on WFLA Now to talk about it, to report the facts, then talk about it with our audience, what that new piece of information means. So that's where we go now and where we have been on this story. Nothing really has changed with us being on standby for new information. Additionally, as we're here live for you on WFLA Now, we have Tracking the Tropics coming up here at 2 o'clock. That's next, 2 o'clock on Wednesdays, 2 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Central. We also have, I believe, a stream that's coming together for next week on Gabby Petito, Brian Laundrie. Hopefully, we'll be able to share some more details about what that is in the days ahead. But we're trying to provide coverage for our audience here on the story and do so in a way that carries the conversation and carries the story forward. So more details will be shared on my WFLA JB Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube accounts, or excuse me, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram accounts. That's going to be coming up in the days ahead. So in the short term, everybody, Tracking the Tropics coming your way in 14 minutes from now on WFLA.com, the WFLA app. Our team of meteorologists here at WFLA News Channel 8 going over what's going on in the tropics and where we are at the final 3 weeks of hurricane season. And then looking ahead beyond that, on standby for any information that's going to drop from the FBI, and also on standby as well for any potential coverage that we're bringing your way next week on the Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie investigation. This concludes our stream here on WFLA Now. Again, click on the link. It'll take you over to the story that you see here on the right side of your screen. Gabby Petito, Brian Laundrie investigation. Top questions that remain unanswered, the 10 that we went over here on this list. If you're just joining us, click over there and you can read the list for yourself and all the different answers that we have and all the different quotes that we have in response to all of the questions that are still out there on this story. For Walt Petito and Masa Saidi, the 8 on your side team here at WFLA News Channel 8, our investigative team, I'd really like to thank them for their time here on WFLA Now, and to all of our audience members, especially those who are commenting along with us with hashtag HJB, hashtag HMasa, and hashtag HWalt. We very much appreciate you. I'll be heading over to my social media accounts for more. But coming up next on WFLA Now, Tracking the Tropics at 2 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Central.